Hello, Schuyler. You're back on the podcast.
I am. And you're here too.
Yes. It's not because we're desperate either. It's because you have a certain expertise that you're going to talk about today. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
So, as well as being your wife and your co-conspirator in most things, I am a longtime yoga teacher, and I also am a longtime chronic pain sufferer who has largely made her way out of pain and learned a lot in the process. But anyone who has suffered chronic pain knows that experience and that identification goes with you for the rest of your life, because it's a life-changing thing to experience chronic pain. And I can definitively say that the trajectory of my life was formed by it, and the fact that I am no longer in pain is one of the real is really one of the things that I'm most proud of in the work in my self-work.
You think that would have made you a nicer person?
You'd think so.
But there's no correlation between pain and nicety.
Between the suffering you inflict on yourself and on other people, perhaps not.
Fair enough. But so the source of your pain, it goes back to when you were a child. I wasn't there, though I feel like since we were always destined to be together, I feel like I was there. But I've heard the story many times that I think some wayward hippie ran you over in a VW bus. Is that correct?
Well, you could say the inception of the story of my pain started when I was a little girl, and I was, 2 years old, and I was living on a hippie commune, and my mom was doing something like making sauerkraut in the kitchen, and I toddled out of the house, and one of the women who lived with us was backing out in her VW van and knocked me over and ran me over. And my mom, as the story goes, had some kind of a psychic experience knowing where I was and that I was in trouble, and ran out, and in her misguided psychic experience yelled, and then the woman reversed and ran back over me. It's a great story. Anyway, I survived, clearly, and in my second incarnation, my second life, I was sort of a miracle. I think that doctors thought maybe my parents were just stoned and made it up. But I think it really did happen. And as I went into my teens and my early 20s, I had a lot of recurring back pain. And one of the things that
Directly related to that.
Well, I'll get to that. So, yes, that was what I believed. I went to, chiropractors and doctors and the whole panoply of experts in the field, starting in my teens and then even more when I was in my 20s. And that was the diagnosis, was that I'd had this traumatic injury, and the MRI showed that I had bulging discs between L4 and L5, and what looked like that my spine looked like an old woman's, that I had early onset degeneration. Well, that's only in the last decade. My spine's amazing now, but my face, not so much. It's kind of like, your ass or your face. Anyway, so there I was with this story in my head that I had this deteriorated, destroyed back, and I had this traumatic injury when I was 2, and that was why. And I found yoga as part of my journey to try and get out of pain. And that was, I started doing yoga in my early 20s. And what I found in practicing yoga was that it was an incredible balm and made me feel great sometimes, and other times it made it worse, and it would set my back into a spasm. So it was both medicine and poison. But I knew there was something there. And so starting when I was around 22, I kind of tussled away with this practice. And then there was a number of other things that I learned through that decade, through my 20s, that were really the additional building blocks to my healing. And it's a story that will probably sound very familiar to many people who've gone through the journey of chronic pain. And the first was that I read a book by a doctor named Dr. John Sarno when I was 26 or 27. Yes, I will digress, because when we were 25, we went on our honeymoon, and because we were 25 and had no life, it was an extended honeymoon in Brazil for 3 months. And that's when my back went into the worst spasm of my life. And you remember well, carrying me not across the threshold in a romantic candlelit evening, but to the bathroom, because I literally couldn't walk to the bathroom to pee. And so I was in for the first time in my life, it wasn't just like, oh, it was chronically painful and had trouble getting up, but I actually couldn't move. I was fully debilitated. And so when we came back from that, I knew that I was maybe going to have to get surgery, or I was going to have to do something radical. And that's when someone gave me a book by Dr. John Sarno. And I'll digress a little bit and talk about him in case people don't know who he is. He was a doctor in New York City. He was a doctor at the Rusk Institute, and he was treating back pain primarily traditionally, and like many doctors who treat patients with chronic back pain, was getting very poor results. And over time, he developed and studied the theory that back pain is largely not related to the conditions that we would usually attribute to them, herniation and other, abnormalities in the spine. And it's largely it has psychological underpinnings, primarily unexpressed rage, trauma, psychological trauma that you're not, that you haven't been able to get out, usually trauma that you put on yourself. And the crazy thing about this book, and we can talk about him a little more if you want, but is that I, like thousands and thousands of people who've read this book, experienced an incredible healing as I read this book. And I all of a sudden, just even reading this information, my back went out of spasm. And it didn't stay out of spasm. And I continued over the next, 10 or 15 years until I really healed myself to have this was a push-pull, but just that experience of reading a book and actually my back feeling better was all that I really needed to know that this suffering that I was in was largely psychotic, had a psychogenesis. And he then went on through his life to determine that almost all chronic pain, and not just back pain, but things like ulcers or headaches, pretty much anything that it has a chronic nature, gastrointestinal disorders, all stem from psychological, unexpressed, unresolved psychological issues. And he basically said, you really shouldn't do anything. Like there's nothing physical. There's nothing you should do physically to address this. And I would say that I don't agree with that. I think that it is super important to restructure our bodies healthily and to address our the patterns in our body so that we live in our body more easily and healthfully. But I do ascribe to this theory, and many doctors have come after him and brought more nuance to his research.
But do you think there's a delineation between chronic pain and acute and short-term pain? Because it seems that more acute pain can be directly correlated to trauma or some kind of strain or something.
Totally. Oh yeah. No, you fall over, or you pick up a really heavy vase, or you get in a car accident, you turn your head really fast and you get whiplash. You've torn muscle tissue or a tendon, or there's nerve impingement, and there's pain. But all doctors will agree that it shouldn't take more than about 3 months to heal whatever trauma there is. That's about as long as it takes to heal, unless it's something that's, really, really radical burn or something. But that, the body has a tropism towards healing. Our body's really good at healing itself. So if pain continues past that point, what is chronic, that becomes chronic pain. And that chronic pain, that's the reason it's such a mystery. So many doctors can't understand where it comes from, because very often the pain that patients feel is not even necessarily related to the underlying condition. There's actually one of the things that at the same time that I was getting into reading Dr. Sarno and other doctors who were doing the same kind of body of research was there was a study that came out in JAMA in the mid-90s where they looked at like 100 x-rays of backs. Of people who suffered no back pain. They just took a random sample of people who had no problems. And only 35% of those people had like no problems. They were only like 35% had like quote unquote good spines, and the rest of them had herniation and bulging this and bone spurs and degeneration. They didn't experience any pain. And then there are people who suffer, debilitating back pain, neck pain, and there's nothing that you could find on an MRI or an X-ray. So that in itself, it's pretty stark evidence that it's far more complicated than what's going on physiologically.
Right. So let's maybe talk about the different kinds of back ailments that can cause pain, because obviously muscular and ligament oriented are probably the most common, right?
Well, yes, but what we're saying is that you might not even have anything wrong with your muscles or your connective tissues that would cause pain.
There may be psychological underpinnings, but there are conditions like scoliosis, sciatica, the bulging disc, herniated discs, muscle and ligament tear and strain. There are diagnosable symptoms or conditions.
Correct. Of course, there are. And okay, so yes, there can be torn tissue that needs to repair. That just like any torn tissue in the body needs to repair. If there is inflammation and then that's compressing nerves, or a bulging disc that's pressing out and compressing a nerve, that is, that's an underlying condition, and it's insanely painful. And just to be clear, by saying that there would be a psychological underpinning to pain doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that the pain isn't real. The pain is very, very real. But what happens is that when there is pain, the brain creates signals that generally create spasming around a trauma. So this is often called the pain spasm pain cycle. So you do something that's dramatic, a sharp twist or a turn or a fold, or you sleep in a funny way, you lift a heavy object, or you just have a chronic physical pattern that you do in your body over and over. So what causes the underlying condition? It might not be something dramatic. It might not even look like an injury. It might not be something that you could actually exactly pin a date to. But you actually have muscular strain. And then especially in the spine, which is so close to our central nervous system, your brain sends out a message for your body to contract the muscles around that spot, basically to act kind of like a physical splint around that spot. So the muscles all around it, which aren't injured, those seize up. And then when those muscles seize up, you stop getting blood flow to those tissues, muscles, tendons, nerves. All of those things need blood flow, and it's called ischemia. And so your regulated blood flow, even a minor reduction of blood flow to tissues, causes a pain. Like that reduction of blood flow itself causes pain. You're not getting nutrients, you're not getting blood, and then you're not releasing waste product from those tissues. And that causes pain, even though there's not an injury there. There's no torn tissue. And then that pain sends a message to your brain that there's an injury. And then it sends a message back to your muscles to contract some more. So that's the pain spasm loop that your body and brain get into, this totally fucked up dance. And even though you're after a certain amount of time, the tear or the physiological problem may well have healed, you're still in this loop. And that's being generated by your brain. So your brain has to cut the loop. And so people who have been through this process, it's not like you understand, like, oh, I'm really at the point, for example, now where I don't even really buy my old story about getting run over and that's why my back was screwed up. I mean, yeah, I have this underlying I have a seriously bulging disc between my lumbar 4 and 5. I was in chronic debilitating pain in my 20s. I developed a mental and physiological practice over 15, 20 years that took me out of pain. At the end of that time, I thought, oh my gosh, well, clearly I fixed my back. And then I went like 7 years ago and had my back scanned again. Same spine, more degeneration, same bulging discs, but just more general atrophying of the spine that would look, kind of like, actually it kind of grew into my own back because I guess my back looked kind of like an old lady. Now I do have the back of an old lady. So it's not worse, but it's not better, but I don't have pain. So, and I know now that I truly don't just understand intellectually, but I understand somatically that I'm okay, that I am not I'm not a victim of my history or of the pain itself if it should come, because it's not like I don't ever have back pain. But if I feel it coming on, before my whole body would go into red alert and I just knew that this was it. Oh my God, it's going to be so bad. And I have to get on an airplane or whatever. I'm projecting into the future, the misery of this pain episode that's about to hit me. And now I know that it's stress and that, yeah, I have this underlying back that's not perfect, but my back's fine. And I live in the same back all the time. And sometimes it hurts and sometimes it doesn't. And I have a whole bunch of tools in my tool belt just from living for a long time and doing the hard work of figuring out what my body needs physiologically to be out of pain. And the psychological part is like, okay, well, you're stressed out. You need to rest a little bit more. Like, this is the way your body's telling you that you need to chill out a little bit, or you need to address, one of any of the many things that are, rattling me. And so I don't go into the mental spiral, which doesn't send me into the physical spiral.
Right. But you're not saying that the key to alleviating back pain is essentially surrendering to God, to a power greater than you. I mean, that you're saying that there's a psychological element of back pain that you can address through, I guess, therapy, meditation, de-stressing techniques, but there are also physiological practices that you can begin to also address the issue.
Totally. So this is where I would diverge from someone like John Sarno, where I definitely think there's a psychological component. And I also think that we, as people who suffer from any kind of pain, but back pain specifically, which is so complex, or someone who wants to preempt that, need to do the physical work to keep the body healthy. And everybody needs to find out what that is for them. Like, I've found my way through through yoga, and I'd love to speak more to why I think it's a really good methodology, but it doesn't have to be yoga. It could really be anything. And something like yoga or Tai Chi or any physical practice that is also considered a mind-body practice is so perfectly positioned for this, because it's not just conditioning the body, but it's conditioning the body in tandem with conditioning the mind and looking at the interplay between the body and the mind. And with yoga, specifically through the conduit of the breath, which is such a potent way to address the lack of oxygen getting to muscle tissue, which is causing your pain, spasm, spiral. So that's a physiological piece, bridging into the psychological piece. And then, yes, I would say absolutely you need to do the psychological work, and whether that is surrendering to God, and that gives you like really, truly deep, real peace, resolution of your trauma, or it's psychoanalysis. I mean, or it's meditation, and you just really work through the things that are gnawing at you in a very deep way. I mean, and to be clear, it's not, the psychological piece of this is never going to be something simple. Like, I don't know, to be honest, it's not like I can look back and say, oh, it was that thing. I mean, I had a really amazing childhood. It's not like, I don't feel like somebody who was full of simmering rage, I mean, I have wonderful parents and, had a really, really loving childhood. But we all inherit these inner pressures and stresses. And one of the things that the Sarno and his inheritors say is that the personality types that tend to suffer from psychologically induced chronic pain are people who have have a lot of ambition and have a lot of sort of self-judgment in they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And interestingly, another personality type is people who are do-gooders and put a lot of pressure on themselves that way, not just around their own performance, in a work or a, social way, but about doing really good things in the world, which is so interesting to me, because I'm not saying I'm that person.
You're not in either camp.
No. No, you jerk. I would put myself in the first camp, but not necessarily in the second.
No ambition and no charitable impulse. So your back should be perfect.
Only when it comes to my husband. Anyway, it's self-pressure. It's like self-imposed pressure would be the simmering, boiling pot underneath that
right,
psychosis.
But don't you think that modernity creates the conditions for back pain? I mean,
absolutely.
I think I read 80% of adults suffer from some form of acute or chronic back pain, depending. And in some ways, I suppose, like, evolutionary biology hasn't really caught up with the changing circumstances of modernity that have regressed so quickly. Absolutely. That if you essentially go back in history, to the agricultural revolution, well, we weren't really designed to bend over and, harvest crops and carry big satchels of grain. And, you probably saw the first instances of back pain some 10,000 years ago as we changed our cultural habits and the way that we lived. And then, of course, scientific revolution, industrial revolution, people, working heavy machinery until now, which is essentially a sit-down culture where people just sit at their desks all day. And all of those things contribute to back pain, an unhealthy spine, and that our evolution hasn't selected for a new body yet because we're just not moving, because we're moving so quickly.
Our habits are moving so much faster than our ability to evolve, for sure. I mean, yes, 100%. And there's no question that the best thing proactively and physiologically that we can do is move consistently and stop sitting. I mean, it's just from a very technical standpoint, the human body is not designed to do what we're doing right now, sitting in a chair with our femurs at a 90-degree angle to our pelvis. It's probably one of the most, detrimental habits we all take on a regular basis.
So how should we sit?
Well, we should squat. If we can't squat, we should stand as much as we can, stand and move. So this whole revolution in standing desks and people, walking around with earbuds in and having a mobile office is a good thing.
No squatting desks yet.
Ball chairs, which we happen to have at our house in some abundance. Really,
why the ball chair? Because it engages your core, is that right?
Yeah, well, the ball chair, it makes your butt a little higher than your knees. So as soon as the angle between your thigh bone, your femur, going into your hip socket is more obtuse, like a wider open angle, it's going to allow the muscles at the front of your hips, your psoas and your more exterior hip flexor muscles to relax a little bit. As soon as you're in a 90-degree or a tighter flexion, it's going to grab, unless you're in really deep flexion like a squat, in which case the thigh bone drops deeper into the socket again and it's a more stable spot. What we don't want is what's called our psoas. It's really three muscles called the iliopsoas contracted and turned on all the time, because that's our big fight or flight muscle. And that's another one of those loops, like the pain, spasm, pain loop. Your psoas, this big muscle that is really meant to help us charge forward and run away from a saber-toothed tiger, is not meant to be on all the time. It's meant to be able to turn on, but then turn off. But so much of what we do psychologically and physiologically in our bodies and our nervous systems now is turn that on all the time. And that big, long muscle, it's like kind of like a long flank steak, and it runs from at the back of your spine, or at the front side of your spine, in your kind of deep belly, front back. It connects right around the bottom ribs where your diaphragm is, and then runs all the way down to your inner upper thigh bone. It's the longest muscle and one of the deepest muscles in your body. So when that's just chronically on, it's really the same stuff as your back. It's your back belly is your inner back. And that's a lot of what the course that I did for Commune is about, is both strengthening and opening that muscle group in the body, because we want it to be pliable. We want it to be really strong, and we also want it to be really soft. And many people have either a completely atrophied psoas, is weak, or they have a super tight, hard, like immovable psoas. And both of those things, bad news.
Yeah, hard to get at the psoas.
Super hard to get it. And you can palpate it, or a massage therapist can do it, but it's really, really painful.
Oh, yes, the Thai massage,
yeah,
right?
The heel and the lower gut, yeah.
So maybe take a moment to just go over some basic back anatomy, because there's a lot of terms that get thrown around, L3, L5, the thoracic back, the lumbar, coccyx, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
But you look cute saying it.
Cervical curve.
Sure. So your spine has a few S curves. It has a few curves. It's in an S curve, I should say. So a healthy spine has a curve in where your neck is, and then a curve in where your lower back is. And then it dips out where your upper back is, your upper middle back. That's called your thoracic spine, where your upper back is where your shoulder blades are. And then your neck is your cervical spine, and your lower back is your lumbar spine. And then your lumbar spine then ends at your sacrum. Yogis love to talk about the sacrum. It's just one of those things. And your sacrum is really the very bottom of your spine, and that's where it lodges right into the top of your pelvis. And it's kind of shaped like a little spade. And it sits right in the top of the pelvis, which is shaped kind of like an inverted spade. And that has your tailbone at the very bottom, and then it has a sort of broad kind of triangular shape thing, set of bones. We're really like fused vertebrae. And the place where your sacrum and the very bottom of your lumbar meet is where a lot of people have dysfunction and pain. It's also a place where the sciatic nerve can run through. It can also then, the sciatic nerve also then runs down through the muscles of your glutes, and tightness there can impinge that nerve, and that's what then causes what we call sciatica, which is kind of a zingy, nervy pain that then can run down your leg. It can live in your lower back. It can also run down your leg. So tightness in that area, compression in that area, definitely can lead to anything from tightness to severe, totally debilitating pain. And one of the things, kind of getting back to this sitting issue, is that when we sit in a regular chair, very often the tailbone is kind of rolling underneath us, and the lower back, instead of having a nice, good, rounded shape, bulges back. And so you flatten out your lumbar spine, and then all the muscles around that will start to grab on at both the front and the back. At the front, in that psoas area, there's grabbing on at the front, and in the back, you've lost the balance of the curve. And if you don't have this S curve, this set of curves, you've lost like you lost. It's sort of like a would you call it, like a spring of the spring of your spine, which gives it a shock absorption, and instead you've made your spine into more of like a rod, and it's lost its ability to take the shocks of everyday life. And you've set up a cascade of counterbalancing tightnesses in the body. The other really chronic pattern that we see is in part of modern day life is in the neck. And that's the other place. Usually where most pain is experienced in bodies now is in the lower back and in the neck. Some people have thoracic spine, thoracic outlet pain is a big one, but mostly it's lower back and neck. And then the neck piece I don't get into in our back course because I'm really focusing on the lower back there. But the neck is pretty much always related to the fact that we spend most of our time in modern life with our shoulders rounded forward, driving, typing, texting, carrying babies, carrying bags. And that forward shift of the shoulders sends our head forward, tightens the front of our body, and then turns all the muscles in the back of the body on super tight and locked on to hold our body in position. So it's like what's called locked long in the back. So the muscles of the back are long but not loose. They're long but tight. And the muscles in the front are locked short. They're tight and short. And then that just causes imbalances, restriction of oxygen flow, ischemia, pain, cycles of pain, spasm, pain.
Right. So
good times.
Then you should endeavor to sit with your shoulders back.
You should endeavor to sit with the crown of your head stacked over your tailbone, your chest open, your shoulders back, the sides of your neck back. So your spine basically stacked, enabling that S curve to come into its fullest fruition.
You should say that again, because you speak so quickly when you talk about anatomy that I don't think anybody understands you. So just say it again.
Okay, so actually let's just close our eyes. So you close your eyes, and everybody who's listening, close your eyes, unless you're driving. So get yourself somewhere still. And with your eyes closed, just do a little mental inventory of your spine and your head there sitting at the top of your spine, and see if you can feel where the crown of your head balances in relation to the very bottom of your spine. That's your tailbone. Right there at the very bottom, and see if you were to slide the sides of your neck back a little bit and draw the outer upper shoulders, the outer upper arm bones and shoulders back a little bit, and then maybe to lengthen your tailbone down if you feel you've got a lot of curve in your lower back, or maybe if you feel in your inner inventory, in your mind's eye, that your lower back is really flat, to poke your tailbone back a little bit. See if you could find the place where your chest feels broad at the front, but not pinched at the back. The sides of your neck slide back and feel soft, and the crown of your head feels balanced on top of your tailbone. So there's a feeling of stacking top over bottom. And then in between, there's a lightness in the curve of your neck, the soft roundness of your upper back, still being brought at the front, and a nice curve in your lumbar, nice curve in the lower back, just above your pelvis. And then you'd like for those curves, ideally, to remain in place without over-efforting, because efforting then just leads to patterns of tightness. So it's not like if you can open your eyes now, darling. It's not as if you can restructure your body in a day or a week or a month. And it's one of the reasons that doing conscious practices like yoga or Feldenkrais or Pilates, where you are actively working on the alignment of your body in different shapes, all different shapes, not standing, not seated, in a whole variety of postures. You're constantly bringing your attention back to where your body is in space and trying to rebalance it in all different relationships to gravity. That's what over time, and that just takes time. I mean, it takes usually for most of us decades, if not years, to get into dysfunction. And so untangling that is just, it has to be a patient endeavor. But I do believe, I really, truly in my heart believe that the body wants to heal. I mean, until we die, and we're all headed in that direction. But most of the time in our bodies, most things are going right. I mean, the fact that, you're sitting around and doing anything, even if you're in chronic pain and you feel like things are going so wrong. And when we are in pain, all you feel is the pain. But at the same time, all of the unseen forces that are going forth in the most incredible, miraculous way are so right. So, I always try so hard, and it's really hard when you're not feeling good, but to remember that mostly living is a cascade of things going right.
That's an optimistic thought. So can you unpack a few of the other things that you talk about and teach in the course, both from a breath perspective and a core perspective?
Sure. So I will say, relating to this particular course, hold on, that is so illegal. Yellow card for Grant. I'll turn this on.
Use the force.
So the breath, and really one could do, I think, a deep dive on the breath and pain recovery. That would be phenomenal. Put that on the long list of things to do. But the breath is this incredible translator or conduit between the seen and the unseen. So in case you don't know anything about our nervous system, there is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, which are both part of our unconscious nervous system, the things all of the processes that we don't control. Our digestion, our heart rate, the cascade of hormones that course through our body, our, orgasm, all of the things, the defecation.
I have a lot of control over that.
Oh, yes, I know.
That's the autonomic nervous system.
We're not going to digress into your
well, you said it.
Dirty mind. So we have... So there are all these processes that that we largely can't control except the breath. And the breath is the thing between our somatic nervous system, our walking around, doing the things that we can consciously control and do, and all of the things, most of the things that go on in our body that we can't control and do. The breath is the only thing that we actively can choose to control. Mostly, 99% of the day, or even 100% of the day for many people, we don't even think about the breath. We certainly don't think about changing it. So the breath is the gateway. It's the gateway between the seen and the unseen. And the breath is the way that we can really experience in a totally, real world way how we can turn on what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest nervous system, and our sympathetic nervous system, which is our quote unquote fight or flight nervous system. You can watch your breath put you in either one of those places. You can actively use your breath to put yourself or take yourself out of one of those states or another. So when I started to get a glimpse of that through the yoga practice, I was like, oh my, yeah, that is powerful. That's a real thing. And I want to understand that. I want to have like a cerebral and a physiological experience of that control or that play. Control is the wrong word, but it's really like interplay with this thing, this unseen thing that's so magical and powerful. And so I definitely got into practicing pranayama on my own and then teaching some in my classes. And at the same time, I was fascinated with what's called Uddiyana Bandha. And just really quick, the bandhas are 3 sometimes called locks. I like to translate it more as a valve in the body, 3 points in the body that in the yoga practice we can control physiologically, anatomically, muscularly, to control and play with the flow of energy in the body. So the very lowest one is the pelvic floor muscles, and the whole pelvic floor diaphragm, outer and inner, the pubococcygeal muscles, then up into the pelvic diaphragm, just the pelvic floor muscles. And then the middle one is a little harder to pin down physically, but it's the lifting in and back and up of the muscles behind and underneath the diaphragm. And Uddiyana in Sanskrit translates to upward flying. So it's not as straightforward as just lifting your pelvic floor muscles. It's affected by creating a vacuum in the body, kind of like if you sucked air out of a paper bag, if you suck the volume of air or the balance of air out of your lower belly, and that created a vacuum, a hollowing in and up of your lower abdominal muscles and viscera. That action of hollowing back and up is Uddiyana Bandha. In the classical yoga practice, you enact this lifting of the root and then up into the middle to bring prana or energy, life force, down from the base up towards through the heart, through the throat, into the head, and then at the top, you sort of cap that energetic pot with what's called Jalandhara Bandha, which is really like a throat diaphragm that puts a lid on the pot, and then you've got this churning experience of energy in your body. So that's sort of the short version of bandhas. At one point in my practice, and as I said earlier, I was sort of in this push-pull between the physical practice of yoga being like a real balm and also really putting me into serious spasm. I learned about the bandhas and I learned how to do Uddiyana Bandha in some workshop because it's pretty, it's kind of it's more out there than the kind of thing you're going to get in a yoga class, regular yoga class. And inside my body, I had an aha moment. And I had no idea. I mean, I really didn't. No one was talking about what the anatomy of that was. It was really a teacher teaching about the energetics of that upward lift. But I knew inside that I was like, oh, wow, there's a key there for me. Something's happening, not energetically, but physiologically, that is medicine for me. And so I explored it and I learn more about it. I got better at it because it is actually something you do and you have to, we have to practice and learn and I learned how to do it and it was like amazing on my back. And what I learned is I kind of figured out I had to untangle for myself anatomically what was happening, but what you're doing is you're stretching and strengthening your diaphragm and your deep, deep core, which is called your transversus when you do this practice. And those are muscles that are the tendon and ligaments and muscles of the diaphragm are all very difficult to access. I mean, it's not really like, when we breathe really deeply, we work our diaphragm. But this is like stretching your diaphragm in a way that you really can't even do any other way that I know of. And the diaphragm, the muscles and other soft tissues of the diaphragm interdigitate with the top of the psoas muscle. We talked a little bit about the psoas. So, and that's a intersection of muscle groups and connective tissue that you're really not going to mobilize doing anything else that I can think of. And so when it's like you're doing this deep internal stretch to a place that in my body had 20 years of holding, psychic and physical holding. And so by going in and stretching it, I got huge relief. And at the same time, I then started to have a real experience of what the muscles of my deep core were. These muscles called the transversus, and those are the transversus is part of your autonomic muscle group. They're part of birthing babies and defecation and digestion. We have our outer abdominals, which are like our six-pack abs. That's called our rectus, and our obliques, which are the side ones that help us twist. And those are the things like if you were to do a crunch or to do any kind of like typical core exercise, that's largely what we're strengthening. So you could have what looked like ripped abs and be really strong on the outside, but you could be really weak on the inside. And so I, through this Bandha work, started to feel my deep core, which I didn't even know that you could feel the difference between I just thought, oh, there's your stomach muscles, those are your abs. And I started to get like, oh no, actually, I actually can feel those are my outer abs, those are my inner abs. And oh my God, I'm feeling my diaphragm, which, not everybody wants to do. But if you're having, a long relationship with pain in those areas, it's super interesting and transformative to start to dissect your own anatomy. And so I would insert a lot of this Bandha work on my own when I was, in my home practice, and I kind of sneak it into my practice if I was in a class. But it was unorthodox. Like what I was actually just doing was not. People in a traditional yoga class would use Mula Bandha for sure. And sometimes people will say use Uddiyana Bandha. It's kind of thrown around in yoga, but what they're really generally saying is engage your core. But the Bandha work that I'm talking about for Uddiyana Bandha is actually not engage your core. It's actually stretch and open your core and then be able to engage it like deep inside. So it's very non-traditional core work. And it just became really clear to me that most of us are weak and tight in our bellies. Even if we're strong in parts of our belly, like a lot of people have a strong rectus because they do some kind of crunches or some kind of ab work. But most people are tight and weak in their transversus and then in their psoas and all those other muscle groups.
Yeah, so, not only weak, but it seems like unaware.
And totally unaware, yes. But you could be, if you have a super healthy muscle group, you don't even need to be aware of it.
Right.
I mean, the only reason to be aware is to mitigate future pain or, remedy.
But I think there's very
pain.
few people out there that have spent the time and the effort to cultivate the skills to be able to isolate and identify secondary and tertiary muscle groups. I mean, it's pretty
Sure. You only
rare.
do that when you're forced to because you can't get out of bed. But yeah, so I started incorporating eventually, like I did that kind of, I was like on the sly doing that in my practice for a long time. And then I started slowly incorporating it into my classes and certainly into workshops, which is really the context that you need to introduce that information to a newer student group. And you know, some people are kind of like, oh, that's cool, weird, cool. And then some people are like, I had like an aha moment of like, oh, yeah. Oh, and then sometimes students will come to one of these workshops and they don't have any back pain per se. And then a month later, I'll get an email saying, I've suffered from chronic constipation for 20 years. And for the first time in my life, I'm having like a regular poop. And that's not, I mean, it's never, I wasn't even interested in pursuing,
Poops.
in poops, but that's so great. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's all like, again, it's not rocket science. If you like heal and open up all, the muscles of your belly, you're going to heal and open up your digestive organs. And the organs of elimination. So, this is just, it's to me so exciting and phenomenal to pursue practices that take us into inner space. Because why not? We walk around in this body largely ignoring it except for this, this little sheath on the outside. And maybe if we're, an athlete or a weekend warrior, we're interested in our muscles, the things you can see, but there's this whole universe in there that's truly, truly fascinating, and I've only scratched the surface.
Well, it sounds like more than the surface. So we talked a little bit about work environment and sitting, and then we talked about some other kind of active practices and techniques. And then I wonder if you could address sleep and obviously, unless you have insomnia like me, you spend, 35% of your life asleep or in bed or lying down. And are there preferred positions for sleep that people should be taking for optimal back health?
Yes. The consensus really is on your back, on a firm mattress. If you can't sleep on your back, then better to sleep on your side with a pillow that has your head, more or less in line with your spine, not higher, not lower. So your spine is balanced. And then the worst of all is sleeping on your stomach, but that's really nice. And I know you do it.
Yes, sometimes, often.
Yeah, sleeping on your stomach, the worst, because when you think about that, like your head's going to inevitably have to turn to one side or another, which is not going to be the optimal alignment of your head to your spine.
Mm-hmm. What else would you say for people that are experiencing pain? Where is their first stop? What's their first resource? What's their first practice? How do they get in? Because, you're obviously talking about bandha work and some things that are
fairly esoteric.
Yeah, and advanced and requires some degree of awareness or a practice for, I suppose, an average guy like me who's sort of a weekend warrior athlete, professional, that, suffers in and out of lower back pain. What are, I don't want to reduce this to 5 hacks for back health, but I'm going to for a second. I mean, just, what are the kind of basic common denominator ways that we can maintain health in our back?
Yeah. So I would say, number one, you need to, if you suffer from pain, you need to assess whether it's chronic pain. And if it's chronic pain, I very strongly recommend that you be open to examining whether it has a psychological component, while 100% acknowledging that the pain that you're feeling is totally real and it is actually a physiological phenomenon that you're experiencing, but entertain the idea that you could do some inner work that would be groundbreaking for you in changing your relationship to that pain and the pain spasm pain cycle. That's number one. And then you have to find what the modality that works for you in your life and in your, philosophical and religious framework that actually helps you do the work, the inner work. And then from a lifestyle perspective, we need to move. None of us move enough. And so, some of us have more leisure time to be able to move, some don't, but almost everyone can move more than they do already. It's the kind of classic but boring, take the stairs instead of the elevator. At lunch, go for a walk. For the most part, we need to exercise more and less with less impact. So much better to get moderate exercise regularly than to go be a weekend warrior. I mean, a lot of injury happens to people who are sedentary for long periods and then go out and exercise hard. Look at your posture on a regular basis, like adjust the way that you work. If you work on a laptop or a phone, and be a big dork and get your keyboard up to a place where your spine is in good alignment and your shoulders are back and you're not hunched forward and your head's not dropping forward. Because even if your problem is lower back pain, that rounding, the slumping forward, kyphosis as it's called in your middle upper back, is going to set your whole spine off in a cascade of badness. That's 3 hacks. Your 4th hack is to get really interested in strengthening your deep core. And whether you are doing it at the gym or you're doing Pilates or you're doing yoga, know that you could have an amazing, super strong, awesome abs without ever doing a crunch again, ever in your life. I'm actually really down on crunching. I think that many of us are over strong and short in our outer abs, the rectus that I talked about, the 6-pack abs. Those shortening tend to draw your front body tighter. That same hunched forward posture is not what we need. We need strong but long outer abs and a strong deep core. So, for example, in a yoga class, when you're doing plank, that's a deep core exercise because gravity is pulling your organs down and you are using your deep core and your outer core muscles to hold your organs up against gravity. So any kind of exercise that you do, and I share in the course the abdominal exercise that I do, as you know, it's probably the only thing I do almost every day, but I do this deep core exercise that's so dumb looking. And it really it's the beginning of it barely looks like anything. It's really like an inner core resistance exercise. But it's basically like creating a strong and healthy inner corset for your body that stabilizes your spine and holds your organs in so that the rest of your body can move and be still and in motion more efficiently. So strengthen your deep core. I went on way too long of a tangent. I'm really bad at bullet lists, and now I need a 5th one. And then learn to release that, because in the same way you wouldn't want to have tight hamstrings, you don't want to have tight abs, right? We have this weird psychosis in our culture about having tight abs, but you don't want to have a tight.
Thank God for me.
So that's it. Those 5. I give you a bullet point list of 5. You could write them out.
You did.
Stick them on your forehead.
You are an amazing woman. I'm always shocked by how much you know and how much that I don't know that you know until I started this podcast. Now I have you on all the time just to keep the marriage going and spicy and impressive. You are so impressive.
Thank you, dear.
And you've helped so many people through back pain. You've caused a lot of mental anguish along the way.
I send your back into spasm on a regular basis, but then you wouldn't have the good work to do.
That's true. I love you.
I do.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this interview from the Commune Podcast, then I think you'll love this video right here.
As you start to set yourself up for your practice, take a moment to notice how you feel and give thanks for this sweet, sweet, precious time for you to explore